Hey there, biology people. This is Mrs. Vidal, and today we'll be introducing you to biology for our summer cell biology course. Let's dive right in. So in this class, we'll be looking at small microscopic organisms called cells. But to do that, we need to have a small discussion of what biology is. Biology is the study of things that are alive. And when we define life, most biologists look for a set of traits that are common to all things that are alive. We look at how things are arranged in that organism. We look for evolutionary adaptations, how that organism responds to changes in the environment, and how they regulate themselves based off of those changes. We look at how organisms process energy sources. Where does that energy come from? Does it come from the sun? Does it come from plants? Does it come from consuming other organisms? How do those organisms reproduce? And how do those organisms grow and develop throughout their life cycle? So if we're looking at order, all living organisms show some amount of order, some structure within their cells and their tissues and their organ systems where things tend to be clustered. For example, the things that might make a protein to help something like this cute little paramecium here move around. The presence of those tiny hair-like structures that you're seeing around this paramecium are called cilia, and they are small little hair-like projections that cover the entire surface of that paramecium and kind of help propel it through the liquid that it lives in. We'll learn about what's going on inside here later on in the course. Of course, you may notice some little green things here. Those are little chloroplast pigments that you'll see that'll help the paramecium manage its energy intake. But there's some clear order going on here. You can see that this is a clearly distinguishable thing. So if we were even to compare the cilia of a paramecium to, say, the cilia of an ordinary trachea cell within a human being or any other thing that has a trachea in it, you may notice that the internal structures of the cilia from the paramecium and the cilia from the trachea cells are very similar. They're almost identical, in fact. Also, in a population, individuals with certain favorable traits tend to survive and reproduce at higher rates. So those similar arrangements of things within a living organism tend to exist in generation after generation because the things that survived were able to pass on those favorable traits to their offspring. Those traits that we're going to talk about are called adaptations. We'll address evolution a little bit later on in the course. Living organisms have the ability to respond to changes in their environment, and those changes are referred to as stimuli. Now, the maintenance of of trying to keep everything normal within the living organism is called homeostasis. All living organisms have to maintain a specific range of internal conditions, the same pH, the same hydration levels, the same amount of energy in order to keep doing normal cellular function, to maintain the same temperature. I don't know if you were aware, but chickens actually pant to give off excess heat. It's been a while since I've been around a live chicken. I thought that was interesting. King snakes. All life has the ability to reproduce, which means that they can pass their genes off to healthy, fertile offspring. So the way that they reproduce is different. We'll look at cell reproduction a little bit later on in the course. Be it, do we talk about organisms reproducing through binary fission? Do we talk about organisms reproducing sexually? How do organisms pass those traits on? What's the difference between meiosis and mitosis? But again, we'll get to that. So organisms grow and develop along specific sequences based on the instructions that are present within their genome. So the way that a frog develops, for example, has already been foretold, or so to say, within their DNA. So their DNA activates certain parts of their genome to tell the egg to turn into, to have part of the cells turn into a tail bud, and eventually have those tails disappear and become legs in the frog. Each organism needs a source of energy, so everything has to eat. What it eats varies, but for something to be alive, it has to intake its own energy, be it from the sun and having that solar energy convert to chemical energy, which plants can use, to something else that might eat a plant, or something that might eat a bug or some other animal. Kind of a general rundown of how life is organized. A biosphere is a part of Earth that supports life. It's kind of the big overarching umbrella term that we use to describe a particular area where things live. An ecosystem is a specific place within that biosphere, for example, the savanna. A community is whatever creatures happen to live within that ecosystem. A population refers to a specific, excuse me, that's my dog, interbreeding member of the same species that live within a community, that live within an ecosystem, that live within a biosphere. And an organism is that one individual living creature that, if it reproduces, can contribute to the population, the community, the ecosystem, and so on and so forth. A little bit more about that. The biological community is made up of all populations living and interacting in an ecosystem. A population is members of a species that live in the same community. And an organism, again, is an individual living thing, and all of those contribute to the larger biosphere. Organisms are made of organ systems, and organs that are structures with a specific function within a normal body. So, for example, each organ is made up of a collective of tissues, or with a collection of tissues, that are groups of cells with similar structure and functions. So at our smallest level of life, we have cells. Those cells make up tissues. Those tissues can make up an organ. So for example, we may have different types of cardiac tissue, and those tissues all work together to make a heart. That heart is part of a larger body system, which all eventually contributes back to creating one single organism. Again, the focus of this course is going to be more on the individual cells than the sets of tissues and organs that make up a larger multicellular organism. So that's where we're going to end for Lecture 1, Part 1. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day.